Welcome to Liberty Ukraine. I'm Tatiana. Our guest is Denis Eliseevich. Welcome, Denis.
Hello, Tatiana. Hello, viewers. This is
Inviting everyone to subscribe to the Liberty Ukraine channel and also be sure to subscribe to Denis's channel. Stay up to date with the most relevant events. So, Denis, today's events. Trump, as we believe, is seeking peace for Ukraine. We expect that he will meet in the coming days in South Korea with Xi, the president of China. There, they will talk primarily about Ukraine. Maybe not primarily, but Ukraine will be discussed as well. What do you think about this?
Yes, definitely. They are meeting on Thursday, and one of the main topics will be Ukraine. As we have already discussed with you many times on air, Ukraine is part of a chain of very serious geopolitical events and agreements. An agreement on a Ukraine-related parameter is possible. Okay, we make a compromise here, but you give us something somewhere else in another region. Well, for example, that's exactly how geopolitics works.
Regarding that, Trump will meet with Xi. Well, we're hopeful, but we see both the Europeans and Zelensky are working. Currently, we don't know the results of this work, as there are already doubts that something is wrong. So while all this is happening, a victory plan is being planned. This is a ceasefire plan, or rather a few short points. So how many are there? 12 points or 10? The point is that this plan will then be presented to Trump. Recchi isn't very actively involved in this. And so this will be the kind of plan that Putin has to agree to. But Zelensky is doubtful. He's doubtful that without making this plan, he will agree. Why do you think they're working so hard with the Europeans and for how long? And now they're working on that plan and they already know in advance that it might not be approved?
I understand what you're talking about. That's Zelensky. Axios told Americans that a coalition is preparing a plan, but I'm sure Putin will reject it. Consultations with Zelensky are ongoing to draft this plan. It's not Zelensky, wait while we write something without you. That's why he flew to Starmer and the company to sort this out. But this also shows the complete Kryvyi school of diplomacy, and most importantly, how much Zelensky has been imitating a real desire for peace all this time. No one is claiming Putin is a good guy. We all know who he is, but that's not the point. Do you want the war to end? If Trump and the public see all this, we'll understand everything and finally discuss Putin. If someone makes a plan with the Europeans, but then says Putin won't accept it, why do it at all? To show President Trump, look, Trump, we prepared it for him, but he's so bad he didn't agree, so give us some support there and we'll bomb Moscow. Do you understand? This is absurd. And you know what the tragedy of all this is? It's that Zelensky, actually, the whole world politics has come to the point where Zelensky can allow himself to come out and say something like that. I mean, from a logical point of view, this is absolutely absurd, pure absurdity. Let's just make it clear for people. Imagine there were recent peace talks about Gaza with Israel. So President Trump and Witkoff developed a 20-point plan with Netanyahu about all this. Imagine if they and everyone else knew that this plan was being developed. Let's imagine they're writing this plan, and then, for example, Witkoff comes out and says, we're writing a plan, but let's say Hamas won't accept it or Netanyahu won't accept it. Well, Trump would do it right away. First of all, that's impossible, but if it did happen, Trump would immediately fire that person and say goodbye. I don't waste time on nonsense. I have things to do. The president of Ukraine has ignored internal affairs. Everything is now controlled by Yermak mafia groups and the deep state. That's already happening. As for foreign policy, we're setting up things that clearly don't work. Oh, excuse me, this is just ridiculous. And this once again confirms what we've talked about many times. If you're truly committed to peace, you'll make some extraordinary proposal to Trump and Putin that will at least be seriously discussed and at least theoretically lead to peace. But here's one remark. Such a plan is possible, but it would cause Zelensky's political downfall, which he finds completely unacceptable.
Is it possible to assume that Zelensky is saying that this plan won't work because he relies solely on the idea that Putin is an aggressor, that under no circumstances will he agree to a truce? And that's what he says. Sanctions hit the wallet. And the key to bringing the war closer is missiles. Sorry, to bringing peace closer, to bringing peace and ending the war. It's missiles. So he sees that Putin doesn't react in any way to the proposals made by Ukraine and the European Union. They want missiles just to physically show Russia its place and its role.
Good question. And here we return to the main point. And the main point is that it's not about the missiles, not about the territories. There are issues of NATO, neutrality, the Russian language, and religion. Do you understand? And all of this needs to be discussed from the very beginning. And when all of this is truly discussed, for example, the future of Donbass, we forget about Crimea for 30 to 40 years, and that's how it all begins. Later, those territories, exchange or not, missiles or not, that's where it begins. Because there are things that, if not settled now, will lead to war again in the future. And Russia, on its part, calls these the reasons for war, to end the causes of war and conflict. All right, let's do it. I would say to President Trump, Russia has put the reasons for war on the table. For example, 3, 4, 5, there aren't 25, even the Russians agree. It's exactly as I said, 100%. Let's sit down and work this out with the American delegation. And that's it. And you see, Tatiana, if a person says, give us missiles, that's not a path to peace. That's only a path to escalation. I'm not debating whether to bomb Moscow. Everyone knows that. I'm saying this won't bring peace. Is our goal peace? Zelensky doesn't want peace. His goal is, give me more, I'll keep fighting. Did you hear Tusk? The New York Times said that Zelensky told me Ukraine could last another 2 to 3 years, but he's worried it might not be 10. Zelensky seems to believe it's normal to lead Ukraine for at least 10 years after winning just one election. But this is just a disaster. I don't know how people don't see it. Like, to me, it already looks like a complete disaster.
I wanted to ask you, how do you see this situation? So Ukraine, do you think Ukrainians could fight people for another 2 years?
No, not even a year. No, in a year, look, now it's the end of October 2025, sometime in the fall of next year. If we imagine things continue as they are today, let's model what will happen with the energy infrastructure. That's one. Second, how many civilians and soldiers will have died? What will the territorial recruitment centers do? Mobilization. A political crisis overall, meaning no freedom of speech, no political process. How many times have we already discussed on air the budget shortfall, the military budget being 50% short, that's $60 billion. But most importantly, all of this is scary and bad. But the scariest thing is that there will be complete disappointment among the people, both those who left and those who stayed in the country. And they will have total apathy and no faith in a normal future. You know, even my own followers, yes, even my followers are starting to write, I don't believe in any kind of future at all. I'm just waiting for the borders to open so I can leave and forget this like a bad dream. Believe me, these people are speaking with emotion, but it's pure disappointment. It's not just disappointment in Zelensky anymore, which is scary, but in Ukraine as a country. That's what I can't accept. I'm just trying to explain to people, please, you shouldn't project the negativity created by Zelensky's government onto the country of Ukraine itself. Thank you. We all know the country is wonderful. We need a new government, an end to the war, and restoration of democracy and freedom.
I want to clarify again about language and religion, as this question comes up often. But don't you think that this is simply a situation that was artificially created? There is no such problem, and there is no problem in this. And for the authorities, there is no problem in this either. Both sides are simply unwilling to end the war. That's why Putin has this idea that you are humiliating Russian speakers. And in the Ukrainian authorities, we see this idea that you speak Russian and this must be stopped immediately. This really is a problem, or was it just invented, created, and used as an excuse not to end the war?
Of course, it's not a problem. Of course, we are still young people in general terms, but I remember my childhood in the 90s. There just wasn't such a question back then. Everyone understood each other. Everyone was from different regions. Really, it was never a problem. At some point, this was taken up and then fueled by Soros's non-governmental organizations. That is, it was identified what could be used to stir up conflict, divide people, and use the divide and conquer strategy. And at the same time, Putin has something against Ukraine. Let's make these triggers, this red flag, even redder and wave it in front of Putin all the time. What it led to is what we have today. This doesn't justify Putin. I'm just explaining how it works technically. Of course, it's all made up. The church, look, honestly, that's how I see it myself. Roughly 30% of Russian Patriarchate priests are Federal Security Service or KGB agents. But we have Federal Security Service and KGB agents in the Security Service of Ukraine, in the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, and honestly, they're everywhere in Ukraine. Subtitles. None of this gets shut down. For example, if a traitor is found in the Security Service of Ukraine, we don't close the Security Service of Ukraine or Verkhovna Rada. The same logic applies here. Leave these people alone, let them pray however and to whomever they want, but do your job. If someone turns out to be an agent, prosecute him. That's it, that's how it's done. But this is also being exaggerated. Poroshenko, United States Agency for International Development, and Soros people were all involved in a scheme with this Tomos. So they needed to find another excuse, like, how do we separate from Russia, create division, and show that we're different? But in practice, it doesn't lead to anything. People in Ukraine aren't more spiritual or richer, and life hasn't improved. In fact, things just keep getting worse. And the cherry on top of the cake, people who watched the Servant of the People series, there was an episode there. When oligarchs back their favorite politicians, they just push them to focus on things like the language issue. The politician says, in Switzerland, there are 4 languages, and let's skip that signature phrase. Zelensky, as a screenwriter, actor, and along with his team, knew this was nonsense. Today, he's been fully re-recruited and goes along with it. The actions of media and public figures recruited by intelligence agencies are simply unimaginable. Here's what needs to be done, not just criticism. Take the American Constitution as a foundation. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of languages. In America, Trump recently made English the official, not state language. America existed a long time without that concept, and even after he acted, nothing changed. You go. Every government institution has translators for all languages, and documents are in both Spanish and English. Here is a document with its name in both languages. Sign as whoever you're representing. The paperwork goes like this. The record keeping is done without any problems. Can you imagine what they could have created here? Around 60% of Americans speak Spanish. Could they have done something similar here? But no, that's not the case.
We see this problem in Ukraine, and on the other hand, the Times publishes such a quote from Trump, indirectly conveying his speech. Putin believes he has the people and equipment to win, and he won't get tired quickly because he's carrying out airstrikes on Ukraine's energy sector. This is exhausting Ukrainians, and the Russians feel that victory means the capitulation of Kiev because they couldn't physically achieve their goal by military means, but people are exhausted and want a truce. Do you think in the end the final word is that Putin doesn't want this peace, that he doesn't want to agree to a truce? So Zelensky might be ready to some extent and Ukrainians are ready, but Putin categorically does not want it.
I never claimed Putin wants peace. Subtitle editor. And that's a completely separate question. I never claimed that Putin wants peace, but there's another point. Putin doesn't mind parting ways if certain agreements are reached. Someone seeking peace wouldn't kill with drones or do such things. Putin doesn't want peace. And even if Zelensky wanted it, it's not that simple. You either want it or not, you understand? Actions show this, like the one we discussed today. We're making a plan, but it won't work. And Trump himself, if you remember, after Zelensky's last visit, said the press wrote everywhere that Trump felt that Zelensky wanted escalation, not an end to the war. And everyone understands by his behavior. But how many times have we talked about this with you as well? You need to go to Putin and Trump, not show off. Like, I'll go to this city, I won't go to that one. Arrive with a completely unconventional proposal. Just leave our territory. You're the aggressor, but it doesn't work that way. You need to propose solutions to specific problems. If we dislike Russia and see it as an enemy, but it requests or demands something in negotiations, we still need to comply. Just like Israel, Hamas, and Gaza did, it's clear who they are. But Israel sat down at the table and talked. Whether it was unpleasant, whether they liked it or not, even with Trump putting pressure, it had to be done. And that's how everyone has acted throughout history. You'll never like your opponent or enemy, especially regarding killing or military aggression. The question is, if you don't want to negotiate like that, then leave, let another president come and sort out the situation, call elections if you find it disgusting there. Or like Trump, you'll notice that Trump keeps repeating Zelensky and Putin hate each other. Why does he say that? He's making it personal, they dislike each other, but others are dying.
That's why I say it comes from deep within my soul. I mean, that probably our government wants peace because we still see the situation where the dam in Belgorod region was shelled and damaged. Of course, we don't feel sorry for that Russian dam. But the thing is, we're afraid that the Russians will start launching retaliatory strikes on Ukraine. And today they said that they tested the Burevestnik missile during the peace talks. Supposedly peace negotiations are happening, But with this Burevestnik, they're saying the test was successful. We are preparing for deployment and we will have security guarantees. And the thought comes up, Trump says that this Burevestnik absolutely does not scare America. But again, why doesn't Trump put more pressure on Russia with stronger sanctions? Why doesn't he put personal sanctions on Putin? Why does he allow them to test these Burevestniks to keep going? And the world is stressed, tense, and in Ukraine, we don't see a way out of this situation.
Step by step, Donald Trump clearly said about the Burevestnik, if he were Putin, he would focus on making peace, not testing the Burevestnik. And this Burevestnik flies for thousands of kilometers, something like 4 or 8. He says, we don't need that, we have a nuclear submarine. If you make a move, we'll show you how it works. There's nothing to discuss here. Putin can bluff against a weakened Ukraine, but with a true superpower like the United States, he should remain silent. He should calm down, as Trump is trying to explain. About everything else, what was your question again, and what was the second part?
Why does Trump allow Putin Burevestnik to keep the whole world under stress? Because there is a nuclear threat. And of course, this is stressful. And against this background, for example, Dmitriev meets with American representatives at the White House. And the question also arises, why do they want the sanctions to be softened? Do they want to establish contacts with the Russians? Why does Trump allow this to Putin?
No, well, yes. You heard how I announced the sanctions, very serious ones on Lukoil and Rosneft. Here you have some action. I've already told you, and I'll tell you again, how Trump's team and Trump himself work. If we do everything super harshly right here and now, then there won't be any peace at all. Putin will be punished and Russia will suffer economically. However, we're currently ignoring peace. And just a simple question, will people stop dying because of this? Is there any light, constitutional or not? Then simply, well, guys, keep fighting then. I put pressure on Putin, but it's you who have to fight. Trump knows I won't give weapons. I can sell them to NATO, share intelligence for now, but no one will fight long. Another year of war for Trump would have a very bad impact on his promises and everything else. So the process is going pretty slowly. That's why they're developing a plan and it's being implemented. If Putin doesn't get it, they escalate. And notice, with each of these things that happen, Trump goes up a level. Here are your sanctions. Now they're calling, saying, let's meet with Putin. The Russians are calling Trump, saying, let's have you meet with Putin. He said, I won't meet. It's a waste of time. When you're ready to end the war, I'll meet immediately. For now, it's a waste of time. So that he could tell Trump stories about history and everything else, then leave and launch a drone over Ukraine. Everyone understood. And now they're being very tough with Putin, very tough, but moderate in terms of escalation. People need to understand that if you hit Putin and Russia really hard right now and put pressure on them, of course, it could be over in 5 minutes. Everyone would like that, myself included, but that won't end the war. And our goal is to end the war, as is Trump's. But about the people, you said that people want this. Honestly, I'll tell you, I'm not sure that people really want it. People are worried. There are shellings and more. But when you talk to them, not with everyone, but with many, yes, it needs to end. But I had several private conversations last week. It happens often, but what kind of but is there? Especially when people who are not on the front line say this, men of draft age. For me, that's really strange. I mean, but I'll just sit here while others fight on the front line. That's madness. The war must end. We'll only discuss Putin with you if Zelensky clearly shows he wants peace. But he won't, as that would be his political end.
If we go back again to the meeting between Trump and Xi, and considering that Xi usually maintains a neutral position, as a rule, his position is always neutral. And now, can Trump influence him in such a way that he would influence Putin to stop the war?
Of course. Look, it's often upsetting. Ukraine is called a proxy in this war for Britain, for the American Democrats. Actually, that's true. Ukraine is a proxy in this war. And Russia is a proxy in this war. Russia is a proxy for China. And of course, the Trump-Xi meeting. This is at least as important as with Putin, and probably even more so. Without China's support, Putin can't win this war, right? And you know about the trade relations that America and China have right now? So that's why, of course, Xi is like that. But let's remind ourselves of one more thing here. Right now, Zelensky as well. Xi Jinping is often mentioned saying that it's not beneficial for China if Ukraine loses, but it's also not beneficial if Russia loses. That's why they support it, constantly fueling the fire and letting it burn. China clearly proposed a peace plan, I think, with 12 points about a year ago, maybe 9 months ago. Zelensky spoke and his ministers said no. We won't even discuss this. We won't accept it. Today, every one of our viewers can Google or ask artificial intelligence about China's plan and take a look. And there's nothing fantastically bad there. It's even more lenient than what's being discussed today. That is the losses along the front line. Again, the internet remembers everything. Zelensky said a year ago there'd be no frontline losses. Putin was ready then, and Trump discussed it. That's how it is. Then you wonder, why do people keep dying? When could this have been stopped? Even after Istanbul? Does Zelensky want peace or not? In a year, today's proposals may just be a dream.
So you think that one of Trump's demands will still be to end the war in Ukraine, to at least influence Russia in that way? It seems Trump is just addressing his own problems. They don't want to buy rare earth metals from China. Trump wants China to keep buying soybeans from America, and he says he doesn't want anything bad for China. But if you look at it from another perspective, for example, Trump wants to fly to Japan to strengthen trade relations with Japan and thus weaken China and North Korea. If we talk about Malaysia, there were also agreements made there regarding rare earth metals. Because Trump doesn't want to buy these metals from China. He wants to buy them from Malaysia. And so it seems like he's playing all positions at the same time. And does he have enough arguments for Xi to make him agree? The Times are focused on Putin.
Let me get off. You said Trump only pursues his own interests, meaning the interests of the United States. I've always agreed with that. The President of the United States, by the Constitution and duties, must pursue only one set of interests. The United States, not Ukraine or Poland, is prioritizing its own interests and those of its allies. Ukraine is not a United States ally. I wanted them to be. So now let's move on to Trump's trade deals. Sure, as you all say, but there's an important point. Geopolitically, everyone in America operates, how should I put it, understanding one reality that they want to implement. China and Russia should be separated as partners because America's main geopolitical rival is China. And that's it. And believe me, not just Trump, but all the Republicans who ran for president here always said during their campaigns that separating them is necessary. And all the diplomats here understand this. They're working on it. So that's why Trump will definitely talk to Xi Jinping. Like, look, I'll give you great tariffs and this and that and that. But Putin needs a kick. That's the kind of conversation it could be. I'm exaggerating with humor, but it's along those lines. Trump aims to split China and Russia.
And then, when Trump returns from these talks, Zelensky and Europe will present the plan they've created. Those 12 points. And what do you think will remain of those 12 points? If we really take the path of peace, if we move on to a peaceful track, what will we agree on?
This plan hasn't been published yet.
In favor. There were such crackdowns, brutal ones against the servicemen. Those are the main points.
But look, of course, there can't be any tribunal. The only kind of tribunal possible is like the one for the Nazis during World War II. Back then, when they were brought to their knees. But unfortunately, it's unlikely that Russia can be brought to its knees. That's why this demand is ridiculous. You're listing things again, and unfortunately, I didn't read this before our interview. Credit, just peace. We don't want to exchange territories. That's obvious, of course. But then what is the proposal? Again, Putin, you're bad. We need money. You're bad. Pull your troops out. Look, I'm saying it again. You and I agree, and the viewers agree. But it's just not realistic. It doesn't work. We need to handle this carefully and talk honestly. Ukraine wasn't involved, Tatiana. Ukraine is neutral and won't participate. Persecution of the Russian language is ending as Article 10 of the Constitution takes effect. If it started like that, I would say, oh, this is serious. We can discuss this with you. Leave now, tribunal for your people. Yes, now he'll claim he'll turn over his lawless soldiers to your tribunal. Tomorrow, his army will start sabotaging once they hear. He's bold-eyed. Zelensky, you see, said it himself. No one will accept any of this. Of course, they won't accept it.
They're mentioning the NATO umbrella, but we won't discuss it since it's unclear what that means. Previously, we discussed building a protective dome over Ukraine's west and central regions. Now, there's mention of an umbrella, but its meaning is unclear, so we'll revisit it later. And let's talk some more about Natalia Sumskaya. Last time we discussed how she said that we need to introduce Ukrainian language swear words so that children don't use Russian ones. Today they wrote dictations. Natalia Sumskaya dictated the dictation and everyone was delighted. It was like writing this dictation was a method of unity. And once again, a lot of criticism poured in. And they remembered that when Poroshenko was coming to power about this dictation, he said that he could write it in Russian. Again, as if on this wave of patriotism, reproaches started again. She didn't dictate the heartfelt words quite right, but also not too fast. Poroshenko spoke Ukrainian, though he could have used Russian. I remembered those elites people asked you about on your stream. Who are the Ukrainian elites and how will they lead us? And now for the finale, I would like to ask you, what is happening to us? Do we really have some kind of problem in our mentality that we can't overcome? Who are these elites and do we really need them or do we just need ourselves? To feel the strength within ourselves and move forward on our own? We are the strength moving ahead into something new, into the future?
Well, the elites, the real elites, as we understand them, as they are defined in all the proper dictionaries, there are none in Ukraine. She is not in Ukraine. In Ukraine, there is an establishment. Yes, it exists, but there are no elites. At the same time, expecting someone to do something for us or to help us is also a losing strategy. People need to understand that we can't go on living like this. We just can't keep living like this. Look, you probably saw last night in Argentina in the parliamentary midterm elections, Javier Milei and his party won. And by the way, Milei has already been in power for almost 2 years. People trust him. He won by a landslide with 40%, while the next closest got 24%. He'll have many people now, as their bicameral parliament means there are many Senate deputies. He can now implement his reforms even faster, as seen in Argentina. People got tired of it. You know, they were counting on some kind of elites, but who is the elite here? Milei is not the elite. Milei is not the elite in Argentina. Our people, including Milei, see him as someone inspired by this idea, who inspired others and provided an alternative. And people believed him, they chose him, because you can't expect a different result by choosing the same thing. If we keep talking about Poroshenko, Timoshenko, Zelensky, and Zaluzhny, the outcome will stay the same at best, but as practice shows, it only gets worse and worse until this is thrown into history's trash bin. People don't mean a new appearance. They usually mean new ideas, which is the main change. Things will change, but for now, it's just commentators, dictations, and madness. Ukraine has caught this obscurantism from Russia. They have their own values, and now we are developing our own values. It's a disgrace. Honestly, it's a disgrace.
People, I want to address you. If you are ready to look not for the elites, but if you are ready to look for Javier Milei, because for him to come to us, there needs to be a demand for him. If you have it, please subscribe to the Liberty Ukraine channel. Stay with us. Subscribe to Denis's channel. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.